You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network. There's a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects that we all, including Peter Bear, love to frolic about in our free time. Batman Book Club is also on Patreon if you want to help support the show. Join some others, keep those generators running in the Wayne Manor study. Just go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Now, thank you for listening to episode 165, The Last Arkham. Joining me to go into the depths of the Arkham Asylum. He's no stranger around these here parts. It's one Sir, director Tim Rooney. Tim, thanks for coming back on the Batman Book Club.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. Thank you for having the open invitation, especially with the the stacked people that you have on the show on a regular basis. And then
Jay Oz is a hack.
Oh no! I didn't know that gentleman. He is
oh
a very
man,
nice
okay.
person. Thank you again. We were discussing this prior to recording, how many times have I been on? Like, this is the fourth time I've been on.
This
Not
fourth.
Hat trick being 3, not part of the 5 times club, but I think it's kind of fortuitous that I'm on for the 4th time because the story it revolves 4 issues. So I think that's kind of
went
hand
there
in
you
hand
go.
like that.
Wow, serendipity.
Yes.
Meant to be. I was gonna say, and as we were listening to of like what the books that you've covered since you've been on here, it's like, oh, that's a good lineup of stories. But then also thinking about it too, I feel like the whole show, all episodes have been just a good rundown of stories because there's like 98%, maybe even higher than that now. I don't know. Of stories are all ones that I've liked. There's one Javi still holds is the most stressful episode on the Batman Book Club with Batman R.I.P. And then there's another one of a story that I actually don't like, and that is the oh my gosh, is it Last Night on Earth?
Night on Earth.
With that Eric Carter he knows. But that was a great conversation because it was good to talk to somebody who loves it and I don't love it. And we had a good common ground. We met out back afterward and beat the hell out of each other, but that's fine.
I mean, now you carry Eric's head in a jar.
I do.
You across the plains of the apocalypse, and so I think it all worked out in the end.
I was gonna put it behind me, but I mean, I put it away in storage, and it just wasn't worth going down and digging through everything. So, yeah, there you go. So, are you ready to enter Arkham Asylum, Tim?
Yeah, I always am, and I'm
always
always am. But especially with a companion like yourself to discuss
you.
Arkham and its residents.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's dive into The Last Arkham. Now, of course, this was the first arc in the Shadow of the Bat lines, issues 1 through 4, released in 1992, written by Alan Grant, with art by Norm Breyfogle. More on that noise in just a second. It was released, like I said, 4 issues, 1992. There was collected in a Last Arkham trade paperback there in the mid-90s, I believe. It's also been released in the Batman Shadow of the Bat trade paperback collection that came out a few years ago. It's available. Obviously, the issues are available physically. It's available digitally. It's available on DC Universe Infinite. And of course, this Shadow of the Bat volume is available on Hoopla, my favorite app of all time. So, Tim, for this episode, which version did you read?
Well, I initially read this the very first time on DC Universe Infinite. As you said. But for the purposes of this one, I actually got these as single issues because there is I guess you could guess you can say like a flea market near me that has a bunch of booths of local businesses that sell like tchotchkes and stuff like that. So you can buy like old vinyl or a giant like tin Coca-Cola logo. And there's a
Yeah.
comic and yeah, and there's a comic shop that has a booth set up, and it's next generation of comics and cards for anybody who's in the Long Island area. And what they do is if they have a storyline in single issues and it's a complete storyline, they'll bag and board them and put them as like in one container and like, all right, this is this storyline bagged and board. And so I got all 4 of these issues as floppies for $10, and I was
Nice.
incredibly happy to break it out and read it for the purposes of this review.
Very nice. Floppy's like physical issues. As if you couldn't rank any higher on Peter Vera's list. That secures your position there. He has much respect for the physical issues.
I mean, like, otherwise I'd miss advertisements for Patriot games.
Yeah.
Batman Returns on the back of it. Almost every
my
issue
goodness.
had, 1, 2, 3. Except for the last one has Star Trek Generation collectors cards, which was at the height of like it was of Star Trek Next Generation at that point.
Well, for me, I have the Shadow of the Bat Volume 1 collection. I thought I was gonna have to settle on Hoopla. Now that feels like it's a negative connotation. I would never do that to Hoopla, but I was able to actually grab this sucker out of storage, and I'm glad because when I can get my hands on physical, I'd rather just read it physically. Do you remember? So yeah, well, for anybody asking, I think, yeah, yeah. This trade, I believe, came out in 2016, and they did, I think it was 4 volumes total, collecting all the Shadow of the Bat. And I think they're pretty affordable to find online. So if anybody wants to track down this trade, I didn't check and see. It's not too shabby, the trade that came out in the mid-90s that was just the Last Arkham either. I actually like that cover quite a bit. So there's a little heads up note for anybody who still maybe want to track it down physically. Do you remember when you first read this story?
I think this was maybe like a year and a half ago or so. Like that's when, because I think, or maybe even a little bit longer, because I think it's, because I think my interest and affection for Alan Grant and Norm Breyfogle was a partnership from. Yes, it went from just being like, oh, this is alluring. Oh no, we're in an affair now, because that's how much. I mean, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale will always be my team. My go-to team.
Same.
I think of Batman artists is I think R.I.P. Tim Sale, and now sadly R.I.P. both Alan Grant and Norm Breyfogle. When Alan Grant passed away last year, like that was amongst every other DC comic artist that we lost last year. It was like such a gut punch, and Alan Grant as a writer specifically always fascinated me because like he started his career as a 2000 AD writer working on Judge Dredd, and if you read like his early stuff when he came over, like with the British invasion, like so many other people, like, hey, Alan Moore, this Alan Moore guy's working at. Let's see who else we can get named Alan, and then
let's bring in all the Allens.
Yeah. I mean, like, you had Alan Grant, you had Grant Morrison.
Enter Jurassic Park 3 Raptor, Alan.
Oh God! Like if that was the great case of like, no, they didn't get anybody out of Liverpool, or not Liverpool, Edinburgh, because of that.
Oh man.
But yeah, like with Grant Morrison, Neil Gaiman, Alan Grant, and Alan Grant's like early like stuff that he started with. He was co-writing Detective Comics with it was John. They were a writing partnership, and I'm totally blanking on their name right now. But like their voices specifically when they would write in Detective Comics, and like the overarching theme of when they're writing Batman and Detective Comics prior to Shadow of the Bat is like, Batman does not like drugs, drug dealers, drug users. Like drugs are bad. Like I guess you could argue
drugs are bad. Okay. John Wagner.
John Wagner. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks, Google.
Yeah, I started typing. All right, vamp.
Yeah, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. Okay, I can't say. Yeah, I know everything. No, it was Google. Carry on.
Yeah, and so like I was like, John Wagner and Alan Grant's writing on Detective Comics is fantastic. Anybody who has not done themselves the service of doing that, especially because of stuff like on DC Universe Infinite,
Infinite.
or on Hoopla.
Mhm.
You owe it to yourself for that. And Alan Grant partnered up with Norm Breyfogle, whose art is always incredibly striking and very expressive. Like panels within panels, like art within art, like, and especially if you ever read, it's, what is it? I think you've been sharing images of like the birth of the demon, like the Ra's al
Oh
Ghul
my
origin
gosh.
story, like that. It almost looks like it's almost like it's
Mm,
all splash pages, like all watercolors. It looks amazing.
so good. Yeah. So this is interesting because I always thought that I had this arc physical issues, but no, I have the first issue only.
Huh.
So I never read this story in completion until 2016 when I got this trade. So it surprised me because when I got this trade and and it said the last Arkham, and I'm like, see, I think I have these. So, but I don't have the following issues. I have like scattered issues of Shadow of the Bat. And as I read it too, I'm like, oh man, I don't remember any of this. I don't know any of this. And then I went back and finally looked at my long box. I'm like, nope, I only had the first issue. But yeah, so the first time that I read this in its completion was this trade paperback in 2016. Even though the first cover for that, or the cover of the first issue, is very, very ingrained in my memory because I've had that issue forever. This is still this is still, it's not one that I've read like a ton since then. So it was kind of fun going back and reading it here too. Cause I'm like, I don't full out remember what happens. And that's very exciting. And I know, and we'll get to it, this is Zaz's appearance, his debut, and stuff too. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, I knew that Batman's locked up in Arkham Asylum. But details are sketchy outside of that. So that leads me into my last question for you. Why did you choose this story?
Because I love when like in The Dark Knight,
Yeah,
a movie that's brought
let's
up
bust out
pretty
all the
liberally
hits.
on this show.
Yes.
with good reason.
Yeah.
But like that, the Joker says he's the unstoppable force and Batman's the immovable object. I love seeing stories of Batman being the unmovable object
Yeah.
and testing him of his, whether not just his physical prowess, but his mental capacities to keep himself as grounded as possible and keep himself solid no matter the odds. And this almost seems like a sequel to Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, a series, the original series Earth.
Yeah.
And it kind of also plays into one of my favorite episodes, the Batman the Animated Series Trial, where Batman is put on trial by his rogues to see if he's belonged, like if he is responsible for their creation, and does he belong within these walls?
No. Yeah. Interesting. So anything you'd have said would have been acceptable. I could have just been fine with you saying because Norm Breyfogle and Alan Grant. And I'm like, perfect reasoning. But no, your reasoning is very sound. It bears a lot more maturity and thought behind it than my answers would have. In kicking off the discussion on this story, I mean, there's so many different avenues. I think let's start first with like this being the kickoff of a new Batman title. So in that trade, from I think when I looked up, it said it was collected in 1995 in a trade. Alan Grant wrote an intro. That intro is carried over into this trade. And basically, I mean, comic fans had heard that there were, like annual retreats for DC Comics. Maybe there's still in a variation of that, but especially like with Batman and talking about upcoming storylines and events and such. And Grant here, he said that Denny O'Neil, the late great Denny O'Neil, was, the editor. And they'd said, okay, the Batman line is the main. Let's see, I don't want to misquote here. Batman Monthly ran the regular continuity stories. Detective Comics was more what Batman did on his nights off from the monthly. And Legends of the Dark Knight, which I continually say on this, is maybe one of the best, most consistent titles in the history of Batman comics. It focused on events in our hero's past. So as we all know, those were earlier time. So what would be different about Shadow? The title provided it. The shadow of the bat would fall on various heroes or villains, putting someone new under the spotlight in each story arc. And then kind of trying to debate who would be the first under this. And instantly people would go to Joker. But Joker was just heavily involved front and center in the Robin miniseries, and they didn't want to oversaturate him. So then they also didn't feel like, right? So other members of Batman's Rogues Gallery, Penguin, Two-Face, Catwoman, Riddler, and so on, somehow didn't seem individually strong enough to carry off the first 4-issue storyline in a new comic. We needed a, quote, new classic villain, not the easiest of characters to create when you're up against 55 years of continuity. And he said DC President Jeanette Kahn, she usually sat in those meetings, and she said Arkham Asylum. That's an interesting tidbit there, because I bet that was one of those, like, once you say it, you can't undo it. And how, like, I can only imagine like a room full of creatives as people are thinking literal physical people, and somebody throws out the idea of Arkham, of like a sit back, almost like a little Antonio Banderas gif action. Ooh, yeah, I like that. And so I think that's like a fun little, it's a fun note in the story of how this title coming to be. And then that's what led to this first story of the Last Arkham. Because Arkham Asylum it's a serious house on serious earth. But like, when done correctly, like what an atmosphere, what like a dark cloud that can hang over a story, when it is like, that's kind of a centerpiece and a focal point of a story in Batman lore is Arkham Asylum. Like I love that. And so this was just kind of like really fun to reread and what do I want to say? Like, think about the origin story of this story is that.
Right. And like, I imagine, like, if you look back into earlier times where like Rutland, Vermont was the place that a lot of the creators went to in the 70s.
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
I was thinking, like, I'm like, I know that was, they even wrote themselves into a story. Like Jerry Conway and Denny O'Neil like are written into a crowd.
The Night of the Reaper. That Neil Adams illustrated, and it's a Halloween one. They're in like a Halloween parade.
Yes. Like I almost imagine it could have been something like that. I imagine if they do retreats, I imagine it's done through Zoom or Teams or something like that.
Yeah, now
they probably put like a forest background as their background to plan out their stories. But no, I mean, you think of Arkham. Arkham is a place of both Batman's mistakes as well as his hope that things can get better. Mistakes in the fact that a lot of people that are inmates there, who may or may not be there indirectly because of Batman, or are continually there because of Batman, the question that's brought up in that aforementioned episode of Trial, but also that whenever Batman brings somebody in, even if it's the Joker, Batman still has a hope that these people can get better.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, he'd be the Punisher and he'd be executing these criminals left, right, and center.
Yeah.
So it is a weird, twisted, like binary thing in Batman's life that, like, yeah, it is a terrible place. It's a serious house on serious earth.
Yeah.
It's also a place where there's always a chance that somebody can get better if it's in the right hands. In the purposes of this story, it is not in the right hands.
No, and I think so. Arkham, I think, has to continually fail. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the stories that we get. And I know that like some writer would want to approach it of Arkham succeeds, but it's just like, no, if we continually want our stories, Arkham has to fail in some regard. And so that's why I do love, and as you just pointed out, Batman has hope every time he puts a criminal back in Arkham. He has hope that this is going to be the time that they're going to heal. It just makes it, I don't know, there's just a lot there with Arkham of the hope being there, but then the methods, questionable. Methods are questionable at best. Like you even said, the Arkham Asylum, Morrison's story of the inmates take over the asylum. It's just so rich with depth, I think, of stories that you can do with Arkham, of literal, metaphorical, like all that kind of stuff you can approach an Arkham story. So it doesn't go Alan Grant doesn't go supernatural with Arkham here. Like, it's very literal and stuff, but I mean, it's still very effective of like, yeah, this is like the root of the story. I mean, it hangs on every page of the walls of Arkham Asylum. And you really praised Alan Grant at the beginning. And I know there's a cool thing for the people to do online and stuff is to bring up somebody's name that nobody's saying is underrated and say it's a crime that this person's underrated. And it's like, well, nobody was really saying that. I do think I'm with you. Loeb and Sale are my creative team. I have all of their stories that they've produced. I love all of them. That's my go-to. Kind of an unsung pairing to me is Grant and Breyfogle. In which, like, because I mean, Grant on his own, you were listing. I haven't read. Surprise! I haven't read all the stuff he's ever written. There's a lot of
prolific. Don't feel too bad.
There's a lot of stuff outside of Batman that I have not read just because I read his Batman stuff and then I reread his Batman stuff. And it's like at a young age, you know, pictures were great, words were, but that name, Alan Grant, in which when I was young, I thought that Dr. Alan Grant from Jurassic Park was writing comic books. True story. It took me a little while
in Batcave, obviously.
Yeah. So that was true. But that was one of the first like writers' names that ever stuck out to me because that stack of comic books that I have, that same name, it is in every single one. So he stuck out with me. And then as I got older and followed more work and read them, and especially the Legends of the Dark Knight Norm Breyfogle collections, you know, has so much Alan Grant work in it too, that it's just like, man, this guy is so damn good in all of his stories. And so it would make total sense. Hey, we're starting a new title, Batman, Alan Grant, you're writing it. But yeah, I mean, Denny O'Neil was a smart man. He knew what he had at the time.
And I think this, like, I was kind of like backtrack a little bit here. Because every 6 to 8 months, the tweet is resurrected of like, which had more Batmania, 89 or 2008?
Yeah.
If you want to put in perspective, Batman 89 spawned 3 new Batman series in Legends of the Dark Knight, Shadow of the Bats, and no, or maybe it's just 2. No, because it was Batman. You know, it spawned 2 new Batman series and a Batman cartoon series.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Knight, as great as it was, did not do that, and Dark Knight didn't have any video game tie-ins.
It did not.
So if you want to put that to
Sadly.
bed, everything like that, yeah. And I feel like Alan Grant and Norm Breyfogle as a team. I mean, amongst the fans, like you and I included, we hold them up in high regard, but I feel like they should be up there in whether it be Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli or Doug Mensch and Kelly Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And even though like I'm not the biggest fan of Kelly Jones, there was parts of some of the art in this story specifically that Breyfogle is getting very close of how expressive and dynamic Jones can be. With like the scowling of Batman, or just like how his cape looks sometimes. I mean, like I've looked at the Norm Breyfogle Batman black and white statue on more than one occasion, but I'm like, where the hell am I going to put that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's tough.
It's like Todd McFarlane like drew like the cape. Like, where am I going to put this? There's no room for it.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, should we? Like I said, so many places to go. Breyfogle, I make a noise every time because if you listen to this show, you know that he and Lee Bermejo are my favorite Batman artists of all time. It's hard if I have to pick one. Like I kind of can't. And then it was like I had no idea when Bermejo was on episode 100, and he even said like because it's all connected, and it came full circle, and how he said, "Oh yeah, Breyfogle was the very first artist that I ever met in person." And I was like, get the hell out of here. Oh my gosh. Couldn't have planned this anymore. And then it's like, but you look at the two's art and there's nothing similar about the two either. So it blows my mind when something like that happens. Just like Bermejo said that he's such a massive fan of Dick Sprang. And I'm like, Dick Sprang is like complete 180 from Lee Bermejo work, you know? Like
him saying, oh, I'm a huge fan of Bernie Wrightson. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. So it, blows my mind with that. But Breyfogle, much like the Alan Grant stuff of comics, that was a lot. I knew that name and that style, that Batman, that Batmobile so much as a kid when I started getting into comics, all Breyfogle designs. So that was like made such an impression on me at that age. And so then I get all giddy when someone comes on this show and chooses a story where Norm Breyfogle is the artist. Like that makes me very happy. And I was like, oh, damn, good. thank God. Like, yes. Unfortunately, some people are probably like, God, Ryan, we get it. You like Norm Breyfogle. Stop being weird about it. I know, but it's just like the man has. There's so much of his work, Batman work, that hasn't been covered on this show. So I'm excited in the future when that happens. And so you chose this book. I mean, the guy had found his craft. Like, he was top of his game with these issues, with these stories. And you were even talking about the cape. And I think it's in the second issue of this story where it is Batman in a graveyard. One of my favorite settings Batman ever is in. And he's got that. Breyfogle does. It's almost like action. Oh, what do I want to say? He can draw gusts of wind. Now, what do you mean by that? Because of how he angles the cape, that looking at a static shot, that the cape is just being blown to a certain direction, and it always looks sharp, as if you touch the tips of that cape and it would, it poke your or cut your finger off. It'd make you bleed. And so those are like images of Breyfogle that I really like, as well as up close. And it's towards the end of the first issue of Batman. He's got this Batman emoting sadness, like, perfected.
Yeah.
And I think that almost seems a little, now that I'm thinking about it, little Kelly Jones, and how it's, I mean, I use the word like sagging, or, and yeah, there you go. That's better, because I'm like, I don't think sagging looks good, because that implies like Batman's fat. Batman's not fat, but it's like drooping, like, sort of deal with that. And there is this, like, man, he emotes such a good, like, defeated, exhausted, I mean, what's another adjective to use? Sad. Like, look in those moments with Batman, like he does that so well. There you go, defeated. Got it. Boom. There's our third one.
Yes, and like, because that's another thing that Alan Grant never forgets, that because I think it's kind of like how Simpsons fans complained about jerk-ass Homer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Batman fans do not like jerk-ass Batman, where he's like the intolerable person, the taskmaster, who has no shred of humanity behind the cowl whatsoever. But no, even in this first story, especially in issue 2, where we find the reason why Batman was in that graveyard, to see that little girl who was obviously projecting the abuse that happened on her dolls. Oof. And his heart breaks for her in that moment. He decides, like, you know what, I'm going to go home with you. I will talk to your parents and try and convince them not to be as bad to you. However, Zaz is on the loose, and surprisingly, he looks like the Tally Man when he's dressed up like this.
Yep.
And he's butchering people left and right, including this little girl's family.
Yeah, I mean, and that's because, like I said, a little hazy coming into the story. And so, first of all, in the graveyard, in which, backtrack just a little bit, Grant's story structuring here is also awesome. And how you don't know where this story is going, other than Jeremiah Arkham is reopened Arkham, newly designed, and you see his treatment toward Cornelius Stirk, towards the
Scarecrow.
Scarecrow, which, okay, Everard Mallet, in which I was like,
Mallet.
I don't know that name. When I looked it up, and I think this is his only appearance. Maybe I'm like, okay, he's nobody that I should know. But Scarecrow, I love Breyfogle's Scarecrow design. Oh my gosh, I love that. When Andy DiGenova was on and we talked Batman 455 to 457, that was a title because I didn't want to give away what that third issue, like what was happening. But it was like Identity Crisis parts 1 and 2, and then the third issue was called, like Fear something, which obviously it's Scarecrow. But that issue 457, Scarecrow, spiders on Batman, not Jason Todd.
Down.
Oh my heavens! Tim Drake in the window with his cape. Cool me down. I'm overheating. But Scarecrow design in that is just like, it's beautiful. I love it, and I love his design in this too. But you see Arkham's treatment of patients in Arkham Asylum, and it's questionable. But it's like, but these are these bad people. I mean, it's not like he's going in and torturing them, but I mean, kind of psychological a little bit, but he feels like those are the methods, but you don't know what's going on here. And then all of a sudden you see Robin taking down people in Gotham, bad guys in Gotham. He's united with Nightwing, who says, like, I just heard, is there anything I can do? And it's like, wait, what? The buildup of this Victor Zsasz, because this is his debut, you just see his mouth as he's smiling, and you're hearing Arkham talk to him and everything, and then it's a nice tease, and then you see at the end kind of like the payoff shot of Batman's in a cell chained up against the wall, and it's like, oh shit, all right, well, this story just took a turn.
Yeah, and like I think that should have been for the residents of Gotham, especially the security guards, should have waved the red flag when, like, oh no, we're building the new Arkham Asylum and we're gonna make it a labyrinth.
Yes,
We're gonna make it a maze, like a Minotaur in the maze kind of idea. And you're like, that doesn't seem like the most constructive way to rehabilitate or to reinvigorate somebody's broken
Doc.
psyche. Yeah.
Question. You're fired. Don't ask me questions.
Exactly. And then we're introduced to Zsasz, and it's like almost like a mixture of both Hannibal Lecter when it comes to psychological manipulation of people, but also the famous British prisoner Charles Bronson, the one that Tom Hardy played in the movie Bronson, where he's like in a cage, like he's only got a few inches to himself because he's that dangerous to be kept around.
Yeah.
And I know, like, there was something that I think Bruce Timm said on like a making of documentary of one of the Batman animated series DVDs. It was like new Batman characters, like in the past, like at that point, like 10 years, like were mostly serial killers. And I think he was referring to Victor Zsasz. I think it's one of the reasons why Zsasz never showed up on the animated series, because how do you do a Saturday morning cartoon version of Zsasz?
Yeah. You don't.
No.
I mean, in the end, you don't. So on Zsasz, and then we'll continue on with the story. My introduction to him was, I think it's Batman 493, but the Kelly Jones Nightfall cover of Zsasz gave me nightmares as a kid. Love it. Love that cover, and actually I love that issue as well. Something tells me, I'm gonna wait to confirm this. That's right. Norm Breyfogle was in that, drew that issue. That's why. So there you go.
There
How
we
about
go.
that?
Everything's coming up Millhouse right here.
That would be one of my favorite issues of Batman of all time, because the cover obviously is striking, and then the interior story. Hey, Ryan, really? That's one of your favorite issues? The issue is about a serial killer holding women hostage at a what do you want to call it? At like a sorority school, like a college, something like that.
Yeah, like
murdered women, kicks woman in the gut, and like, that's your favorite issue? It's like, no, it's a horror story. It's terrifying. It terrified me as a kid. And then in the end, Batman comes and saves the day of the, like everything, like, oh my God. Yeah, damn right. And Zsasz here. So also in that intro, Grant says, the villain, Mr. Zsasz, a book that he'd read, that Grant had read, was called The Myth of Mental Illness by Thomas M. Zsasz. The name maybe stuck out to him, whatever. Yeah, Zsasz, I mean, that's a nasty son of a bitch. And then when you do get to see him in his in his full glory, with a very well placed dialogue balloon,
a speech bubble in front of his privates. And I remember that because, like, I think that's in Widening Gyre or Cacophony, like the Kevin Smith stories, where like Zsasz realizes he's cut everywhere on his body, and he looks down, he realizes his genitalia had been like the only place he had not marked up, and he considers it. And I'm just like,
well, I better.
Yeah, but like also like those stories are a little too talky for me, but like you can make that criticism against a lot of Kevin Smith's work.
Sure.
But give him credit where credit is due, where he's like, no, we're gonna pull really obscure folks out, like what was it, Cornelius Stirk, like being like a villain at the start of that story, or he was throughout that story. So yeah, like Zsasz being introduced here is a formidable force, because he's not just a physical opponent, but like I said before, he's a mental opponent, and he's
Mm-hmm.
like somebody not to be trifled with. I mean, like we do see just a physical opponent later on with Amygdala,
Yeah.
who I just feel sad for. I feel
Yeah.
really bad that he is used, and he's used like this in this story as well as in Nightfall as like
Yeah.
a goon just to be used against the good people of Gotham.
People just use him as a weapon. He's
Yeah,
just used as a weapon. He doesn't know any better.
no,
And it explains in here too about like a disconnect in the brain and how it happened with him. I think so. Zaz, because he is like an unpredictable, fast moving serial killer, and then his appearance alone of like a tally mark for every person that he's killed. Well, quickly that adds up when you see his body. But then, like as you said too, of a little mind manipulation because Gordon and Batman go to see him in Arkham, and there's even a I don't remember exactly. Oh, in the Innocent Babe, a Batman, like in his like in his talking with Batman, he gives him like little breadcrumbs that Batman picks up on, but everybody else is none the wiser.
yeah,
And so like that, like as you were to add on to it, what you were saying of so physical opponent, but a mental opponent as well as for stuff like that. He's having fun doing this, and it's one of those things of, and I mean, it's it keeps the story going of Batman is just so convinced of there are people being murdered in Gotham in like a really like savage and brutal way of, I mean, I'm sorry, like throat slits are very
it's an
it,
intimate way to kill
ugh,
somebody.
yes,
I know it's a weird way to say it, but no, you have to be up close and personal to perform and act like that.
yeah, and I mean it's the Zaz way. And so I mean it's very striking, as you already commented on, when Batman took that little girl back to her home from the graveyard and walks in, and how her mother, her brother, and her dad are all positioned like the happy family watching TV, but we see the image and all their throats have been slit. So Batman knows like this is Zaz's way. Like it's him. I know he's doing this. I just can't figure it out how. And then it becomes such a really great story twist, if you will, that we don't find out until, the second issue even of Batman comes up with a plan of with Gordon and then Kitch, put me in Arkham, commit me so that I can find out how Zaz is getting out, because I know he is.
Right.
Very trusting that Arkham's not going to unmask him either. But then we get enough from that first issue of Arkham's methods and how he firmly believes, like, no, don't take the easy way out of taking his mask off. I'm going to get Batman to take his mask off and reveal who he is, because he's going to realize what he's doing is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like, go back to something like Watchmen, where Rorschach is captured, his mask is removed prior to him being admitted
Mm-hmm.
and being seen by a psychiatrist. Like I imagine speaking to Rorschach with the mask on versus his mask off was a very different kind of conversation to have, and being able to manipulate the great Batman to willingly take off his mask
Mm-hmm.
would be such a coup for Jeremiah Arkham.
Yeah. And I love Batman. I don't know if anybody knows this.
I would be surprised if you didn't this far along.
I do understand in the real world that approach, and like, yeah, that would be strange. I can't say that I argue with Arkham's point in the sense of like, Batman, there's something wrong with you. And as a doctor, I'm going to try and get you to see it and not have me force it upon you. Like, I think that there is validity behind that approach,
Yeah,
but it's Batman.
Yeah.
So Arkham's the enemy.
Right.
But not a full-on bad guy either.
No, like he is, I would say he's a secondary antagonist by not because like he is willfully allowing Zaz to leave the grounds to commit murder in order to further his research in this psychological study or anything like that. No, it's more of like he's just ineptitude, thinking he's actually brilliant and has everything under control.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's hubris on his part. Like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
there's nothing out of control here. It comes up saying like, James Franco and Spider-Man 2. I'm in charge here.
Tim, we are on the same wavelength tonight, my friend, because I was seriously thinking that as you were saying it, was waiting for you to talk or to end your sentence, and then I was going to be like James Franco, I'm in charge here. So how about that? Wow, that's crazy. Do you think we watch movies?
Yes, we do definitely have
A
similar
few
interests.
times. But no, I totally agree, and I'm glad you used the word of hubris, because I mean, yeah, I think that that's absolutely that Arkham's not there. I mean, maybe some of the ego is there, but not cashing in on it. But
No.
for the fact of like for himself as a doctor, like, no, I'm going to make this happen. I know I am. And I think you believe him as he's saying that too, because I know he's got his workers around him that he's saying it to. That's Grant writing to us, the readers, to get that motivation out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that hence that's why it's important that we do quick checkups on, on the inmates there of boom, boom, boom at the beginning, is because we see him in his element doing what he's doing. So yeah, I mean, Zaz is the big villain in this, but like you said too, I totally think Arkham's the antagonist here as well. And then I love, as the walls are kind of metaphorically crumbling down around him, he's still like, no, I've got this under control, because this is, I mean, it's Arkham namesake. It's I'm not gonna go the route of conflicting here. My uncle Amadeus, but then on the back of this trade it says that Jeremiah is the son of the Arkham founder. So like, okay, well, that's a little contradicting. Not a huge deal, but I mean, we know Jeremiah is related to Amadeus. Rock me, Amadeus. But
I was gonna say I was like, nope, I'm not gonna do that.
No, I did it. There we go. But I guess I don't know what to add. We know Zaz is doing it because when he goes and takes out the guy in the telephone booth and he's dressed like the tally man, well, then we do see him pull his sleeve up and he makes a new mark. It's like, okay, so classic Batman, he's on it before everybody else is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help, I'm distracted by the next page because it's the one where Nightwing and Batman meet in the vents, and he's got his little hand up. Yeah. And it makes me think of the animated series when Joker is hanging upside down after the chase over the chemicals. He's like, Batman! And it goes to Batman, and he's just got his little head up, waiting on the rails, and Joker, Batman! There's a meme that went around that somebody had made that was hilarious. And it was like, I forget what the first image was. And it's like, hey, Batman, what are you thinking about? And then it goes to Batman. It's that image. And he goes, oh, justice and stuff. All of that from this Nightwing image.
It's like, I know you asked like favorite image from this book, the story. It might be that. It might be them. John McClane at Die Hard their way through Arkham and Nightwing be like, we can't go on meeting like this. I mean, Grant's got the voice and the personalities of Batman, Robin, and Nightwing down pat, and it is like, and like even to the point like Batman's playing the straight man. He like, I'm on a mission. Nightwing's like, all right, fine, let's do it then. But when the shit gets real and the orderlies come in and seeing them investigating, accessing restricted files, that Nightwing immediately springs into action and proves that I feel like if they had to go toe to toe, I think Nightwing would win in a fight between him and Batman. I think he's more of a natural.
Whoa.
I know it's a
hot take.
I know it's not originated with me. Andrew Leyland and Michael Bailey of the Overlook Dark Knight, they've spoken about this many times, talking about like the fact that Dick Grayson grew up in the circus, that he is far more naturally gifted to be more in tune to what his body can do than Bruce Wayne is. Like, I mean, sure, Bruce is trained all the time, but I think there's an innate ability in Dick Grayson that Bruce does not have. Not taking anything away from Batman, because obviously, like, he's fought Deathstroke, and Deathstroke has taken out like half the Justice League if you read Identity Crisis. But anyway,
Interesting.
Also, I love Jeremiah Arkham's pajamas that he's wearing. That he looks like a circuit board gone awry
Yeah.
in matching top and bottoms.
Well, that's a choice. Okay.
Yes.
As you said with the Nightwing Batman, I really like that part of this story. I mean, it's a little bit, but I mean, you have like Batman and Robin working together, the original. That's always great to have, and how they are partners, and it isn't, I think like even quickly Batman, it isn't like, I mean, he says, "What are you doing here?"
And,
But then it's like he includes him. Like join, like, okay, and just like that, he's not you need to leave. Hey, this is my mission. You need to go home because
it's too dangerous.
yeah, a lot of I know that I trained you for years and that you're your own person now, but this is too dangerous. Go home. I don't like that when that happens in comics. I know it usually serves stories, Batman comics specifically. So I mean, that's just like a little element. It's just a couple pages. And then he shoots reverse style back up into the rafters. Looks very like creepy almost as he says "ciao" in a very
It is menacing. But
yeah.
He is pretty joyful as he like scurries up the vents and gets out of there.
Yeah. He does have something that I think Breyfogle always does well. Everything, but more specifically, I mean, he's jumping over an orderly. Nightwing is, but that leg extension, Breyfogle knows how to extend a leg.
Yes,
It's great.
He never forgets the fact that he was an acrobat.
That's right.
And like how fluid it, like same thing when he drew Tim Drake in the first issue. Like it's not about form, it's about fluidity. I think it's what Chuck Dixon said about Tim Drake as Robin and everything. I think it applies to all Robins. I think all of them have had that to one degree or another. And Dick Grayson being a former Robin, there's always a fluidity in his motions. And to see him go on his own side quest of investigating while Batman's still imprisoned or institutionalized, I should say, it's always like, hey, it's detective work in a Batman story. It's amazing. And we even get like later on, we have we never forget about the action. We have a knockout drag out between Arkham's Worst and Batman on a 1 versus like 18.
Yeah, which that's awesome. But shame on me because there's a couple. So and this is all by Arkham. So this is definitely a questionable method from him.
Very
to put it lightly. The first image where Batman finds out and he's facing all the rogues. But then, I mean, you go to the end of that issue, in which, what is that? The end of issue 3.
Yeah.
There's a couple that I just don't know. And I'm questioning, like, wait, who the hell is that? Why am I not? Oh no, take away my bat card. There's like the obvious Mad Hatter, Joker, Stirk, Poison Ivy, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, Scarecrow, Two-Face, Spectre. Strange that Spectre's in Arkham, but okay. Black Mask, Cavalier, Crazy Quilt, Riddler. And then I'm a little like, the big guy, tall guy in the front, the two bald guys next to the two bald guys, the guy in the back with the big goatee. And that wouldn't be Sensei, would it? Because that'd be weird. Yeah. I don't know who they are. And I tried looking it up. I didn't see anything.
But also, why is Penguin here?
He's in the opening page.
Yeah, but why would Penguin be in Arkham Asylum? Wouldn't he be in Blackgate? He's not.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's more of a logistical thing. Like he wouldn't like the same thing with Bane. I don't think Bane would go to Arkham. Bane goes to Blackgate. He's in full he may be incredibly driven, but I don't think he's deficient mentally to warrant it to be in Arkham Asylum. But it does result in like maybe like a top 10 favorite Joker moment in all of comics, where Batman whips everybody and leaves Joker for last, and Joker being like the Joker I prefer, where he is a big bully, and once the odds are no longer in his favor, he curls up and is like, maybe we should discuss this, and just the punch to the face is
a punch to the face.
Oh geez.
Which he's not in the initial or the end of issue 3, but opening issue 4, Maxi Zeus, which he does appear in this story for like, a couple panels.
Who I also feel bad for.
Yeah. Because he realizes that he's not a god. Is that what you're putting?
But also like, just like, do I have to call up Hades to yell at you? Like, no, no, Mr. Arkham, I'll take you around the asylum. Like, I know it's supposed to like kind of help him and everything, but I'm like, this doesn't this doesn't seem right. That's the only thing I could say about that. And the man with the bandana, that's not Calendar Man, right? The one in the purple.
That's my guess, only because of going around his head.
Yeah.
But I'm not too familiar. This is pre-Long Halloween,
Right.
of Calendar Man, because even in this collection, so later down the line is a story called Misfits, where Tim Sale's the artist, and Calendar Man shows up in that, and it's the very like like the 50s gear of where he's got like the Polaroid date calendar stuff all over himself and red, and he's got a mask on and stuff. So I'm like, I don't know. Like,
somebody more
sure.
knowledgeable than us is like yelling at their phone right now.
Yeah, probably JOs.
Most likely.
Yeah, like, oh, give me this show, Ryan. Why are you on it? You're an embarrassment to Batman lore.
A hack, will you?
Yeah, I do know who that is. His name is Jerry.
But yeah, and the fact that like Arkham's slowly realizing he is no longer in control of this situation.
Yeah, I love that, and that's kind of like, I think that does a lot for the character of Arkham and how he is. Hugo Strange turned down quite a few, but he's on the same path as Strange of not a physical threat, but he has his I'm a doctor front and center. That is his biggest weakness as well. And I don't know, just like that, the Grant, just how he, I don't know, every element of the story, I think it really helps with characterization of Arkham, characterization of Zsasz, that even though this is his debut, does like falls right in line with how Gordon is, how Tim Drake is, how Dick Grayson is, how Batman is, which actually, yeah, he's Batman through and through. There's no Bruce Wayne in this.
No, we never see behind the mask. It's pure Batman in this story.
Yeah. I just saw it here. I didn't ask you. What do you think of the Breyfogle's Batmobile?
It is very much of the time. That is for sure. But I kind of want a Hot Wheels of it. I mean, it does seem like it was meant to be designed to be a toy.
Yeah.
But also, I love like his Bat train or Bat like subway car that shows up at Nightfall numerous times. It's like the exact same design. That I enjoy. I mean, if people can accept the Dodge Charger Batmobile as the Batmobile, I feel like you should be able to accept this as a Batmobile as well. If we're gonna have this kind of parameters and like leeway of what a Batmobile can be, then this one could totally be that. I do feel weird that it's kind of like it doesn't have a steering wheel; it has like a steering console. It almost feels like you're driving. It seems like you're flying a plane rather than driving a car. But that's just me. That's me being nitpicky.
I do have, and I've mentioned it before on here, and I always forget the line, and I don't know if it's in the closet behind me or if it's put away, but there was a line of Batmobiles from the comics each decade. They're heavy duty, great quality, great detail. And Breyfogle's was one of them. And I think that one even too has a little bit where you can take like the top opens and, falls down or whatever. I need to get that out because I'm with you of like, you look at it and I feel as an artist, you want like, that is mission accomplished, that your work is recognizable without any kind of assistance. People look at it and be like, ooh, that's Kelly Jones. Ooh, that's Tim Sale. Ooh, that's Greg Capullo. This Batmobile, you can look at and you're like, oh yeah, that's Norm Breyfogle. It's not my favorite. I don't think it's even my top 5 comic book Batmobiles, but it is just like, there is something about it of its time. So it feels nostalgic, especially in of like first comics I ever looked at. This was the Batmobile. So there's an affinity and appreciation for it in that regard, even though it's a wild concept. They're comics. Don't have to think, how would this look in real life? Because it's like, it doesn't matter because it's not real. It's a comic book.
Exactly. I mean, this story opens up with like a gentleman taking a shotgun to the face and the other person walking away fine and having no repercussions about it and everything. And so, like, yeah, obviously we're dealing with comic book logic, and Grant Breyfogle will never forget the fact that this is a comic book. It's not bogged down by such logistics of like, if it can't happen in the real world, it can't happen on the page. I'm just kind of waiting for Sean Murphy to resurrect it in one of his White Knight series, like that, just to be in the background somewhere. I'd just be very happy if that happened.
That would be like, man, mad props for you for going a little deep pull here.
Exactly. I mean,
please.
Like, I love his design of his Batmobile, but I know he's got a huge affinity for the '89 Batmobile in those stories too. But like, it would be so cool just to see it on a platform in the background somewhere. Like, oh, I know exactly what that is. Just like,
yes,
exactly. And I feel sort of kind of validated for it being appreciative of this design for the Batmobile.
Yeah. What do you think the meaning of the Last Arkham is?
That, I guess that you'd say like one of the meanings is that the cycle of violence may or may not continue. Or no, cycle of violence. So cycle of mental problems can be passed down upon and can be an issue if you don't handle it correctly. I mean, obviously on the days Arkham having problems, and now Jeremiah Arkham thinking like, oh no, I totally have this under control, and realizing he does not by the end, and that there is true evil in this world.
Yeah.
But it's for everyone else to do their damnedest in order to prevent that from hurting anyone else. That's why Batman continues to do what he does. I mean, like, what was it, the contractor who's up to his elbows in debt and everything, made a deal with the devil, and it didn't work out for him. Saz ends up killing him. Arkham thinks he has it in control. He does not. And Batman tried to stop a serial killer from killing people. He unfortunately failed for some, but he hopes that by the end of the story that he prevents Zaz from ever escaping again, which we all know as comic book readers know that's not going to happen. He's going to break out eventually.
Yeah. I have no guess on the relation of the story of the Last Arkham, like its meaning for the story. I don't have one. I'm not saying that it's bad title or anything like that. It's just like, why would he call it? And he put in here, so in that introduction, so I basically almost after this will have read the whole introduction to you almost. But he read a book or a pamphlet that said Superstition, the Common Pigeon. And he said basically of like, you wait until a pigeon is walking by a recognizable landmark, then give it a severe shock. The next few days, the pigeon will walk in front of that landmark hesitantly because it remembers of that shock the last time it walked in front of it. But then a few days after that, when it's starting to get back to normal of walking by it, of nothing's going to happen, you shock it again, and then that pigeon is going to be scarred the rest of its life with that landmark.
Right.
And he said, so the author of that pamphlet, the point was that thought/mind was little more than an irrelevance. He maintained that only an organism's behavior matters. Change the behavior and the mind will follow. And he said that, like, though behaviorism has been largely discredited since then, since the pamphlet story had come out, that thought has always stuck with me. I knew I'd use it in a story one day. The Last Arkham is the belated result. So relating that to the pigeon story, and I was like trying to think of, there's a disconnect that I'm not connecting the two.
Well, I think it's because,
help me out, Dr. Tim.
I think Jeremiah thinks the mind has ultimate control over the being, but I think what Grant pulled from that story about the pigeon is that behavior dictates that. Your mind say like you may think like, oh no, I will do this, but your behavioral will either help you with that or prevent you from doing that. It's in their nature. I guess it boils down to there's no way of changing your nature or like it's like I think of the it's almost like a Pavlovian response, so like a certain response to a current situation where you're always going to have a reaction to something like that, and that Zaz is going to kill no
Yeah.
matter what. Crane is going to terrify people. Joker is going to try to put a smile on people's faces, even if it kills you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Batman knows that, but he's trying his damnedest to prevent it from happening, having those kind of behaviors hurting people. And Arkham himself is slowly realizing that, despite his best efforts, it is a losing battle.
Gotcha. Makes sense to me.
I hope so. I hope I'm not just rambling here.
What? Tim doesn't know what he's talking about. Ryan at least said, I don't know what I'm talking about. No, I think that makes sense. I know that there is a connection between the two. It's just for me, for some reason, I'm trying to connect it. Maybe I'm taking stuff too literally when it's not meant to be. Are there any other, before I get into some questions for you, is there something we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
I just love like I think it's in issue 3, where we cut to the contractor who designed the asylum,
Mhm.
is found by Gordon and stuff like, and just like at least for the original coloring of it is very pink, and pink and blue is the colors like of the crime scene with Gordon. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's recolored in the trade.
It's a pink.
It is pink, okay.
Yep.
Because we discussed that previously, even as off mic, but just recoloring of certain in comics in digital form. So much to the
Yeah.
chagrin of original readers. And I don't know, I just love that design. Adrian Roy, incredible job throughout all 4 issues. I mean,
Agreed.
it is some of the best talent that DC's ever had. It was on this book, and I'm just so happy that the stars aligned to bring them all in to tell this story, and just the Shadow of the Bat title overall.
Adrian Roy, I'm glad you mentioned that because this looks, so I'm just like instantly compare it to that issue of Batman 493. Red Slash is the actual title, but everything looks so, the heavy blue, the pink with the crime scene. I'm like, we've seen those. That was kind of at the time. So in looking up real quick on Google, Adrian Roy colored that issue of the Zaz issue that I mentioned before too. So just, I'm now going to go and look at my Breyfogle books and see if Adrian Roy colored everything, like all these issues that Breyfogle did too, because that would make sense, because they do seem like not, they all fit the same tone, I guess we'll say that, and the same coloring and stuff. So yeah, those are 2 things that I think complement and help stand out even more of, oh yeah, this is a Breyfogle book, because yes, the illustration itself, but then the coloring. So yeah, that's a good point. Glad you brought that up. Go ahead.
One last thing, the omnipresent narrator that shows up every now and then, it's something that comics get away with it, but I feel like I just haven't seen it that often, like meanwhile, and then the omnipresent narrator can be in the heads of certain characters and what have you, and they're not just speaking like Arkham thinks everything's okay, and that clearly is not. But yeah, just things that you just take for granted for comics. I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that conceit as a reader.
Yeah. All I could hear is, meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice. Let me ask you a couple questions here now, Tim, because I haven't been asking you questions so far.
Yes, you've got a question?
What is your favorite part of Batman: The Last Arkham?
My favorite part of Batman: The Last Arkham is Batman dealing with the little girl Karen, I think her name is, and just recognizing the cycle of abuse that's happened upon her, and tries his damnedest to break that cycle, even though it seems like it's a lost cause because Zaz killed her family and everything. But like it's like Batman humanitarian is something that I think is we don't. I guess it's something that's not as highlighted as much that he is a good person underneath that cowl that he wants to help people. I mean, it's
If
one
he
of my
really
favorite
wanted to help people, he wouldn't dress up as a bat and he would
blah
use his
blah
money
blah
and
blah 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 blah. Like the quote YouTuber and sort of friend Patrick Willems, like, yeah, Batman can give all the money he wants to the police and mental institutions he wants, but sometimes the Joker has poisoned the water supply,
Yeah.
and you need somebody to battle that.
Also a comic book. Also, we wouldn't have comic books to read if that's what the story was. So, anyways.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, I think that's like the one joke of like, well, I guess like one of the few jokes of the Flash that did land with me is like, when he's got the lasso truth around his gauntlet, and he's like, I should be giving more money, like, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, we get it. Like, you don't have to, like, it's breaking the fourth wall, acknowledging these kind of like internet gripes. Like, regular people do not care.
Yeah,
It's only internet people that have an issue with that or take umbrage with that.
Yep. My favorite part, I'm going to expand it a little further, but I'm with you on basically, I mean, starts on page 2 of that second issue, which opens up in the graveyard, taking you like basically the whole rewind, catching us up to the present. So, I mean, it's longer than a flashback, but like all of that. And I guess if I have to narrow down even more, I mean, it would be the graveyard leading into the girl's home, because that is, I mean, it's weird to be like, oh man, it was great, it was awesome. Then I turn to it's effective. Yes. I think it's like very effective of Batman talking to this little girl and escorting her home, and then the horrors that await at her home and trying to prevent her from seeing that. I mean, as you even see as she's loaded into the police car and how she has an adult with her, and I don't know, like they're in a time of horror. You can definitely see still there's nobody for Batman to punch, but so you see how he's being a hero in another way, you know. Right. So I don't know, I like that's probably my favorite part of the whole this whole story. How about your favorite panel? And I know this is tough. This is a Norm Breyfogle story, and you can only choose one.
I mean, like, as mentioned before, the we gotta stop meaning like this moment between Nightwing and Batman in the vents.
Yes,
but also I think the same issue earlier, like, what was it, like, yeah, it's one page before, it's the gentleman in the phone booth who gets yanked out and is filleted by Zsasz, but the phone of the payphone itself is hanging out the receiver, and his wife is yelling on him, and then like in the background, out of focus, is the dude getting stabbed to death by Zsasz. I know it's a very like ghastly image, but it's an incredible, like you said before, it's an incredibly effective one that Breyfogle presents here.
He emits action just through lines.
Yeah,
like you see that's a great like silhouette shot of the victim screaming, and then it's just lines of the upper part of the arm of Zsasz, but you know what it is and you know what he's doing. And so it's like a great strength of Breyfogle, like I said earlier, of a static shot, but there's movement somehow. Like,
right.
That's what he did. It's what he does. His thing.
Really, like, because like he knows that like I'm limited to the 2 dimensions, so I have to illustrate a 3rd dimension any way he can. And the fact that it's done kind of sort of like off camera, as it were, it reminds me of like John Carpenter's Halloween when Bob gets killed. Like we see Michael raise the knife into into his close up, and he plunges it down off camera. We hear it thunk, and then we see Bob hanging from the pantry with the knife stuck through him. So it's kind of like, it reminds me of like a moment like that. Plus, I knew if I make a Halloween reference, you especially would appreciate that.
The bingo card. I mean, it's filled out. You got like 7 bingos on this episode right now, Tim. For me, it's comes towards the end of issue 1, and it's when we see Batman chained to the wall. That's the hook of the issue for me. You can show nothing else. You showed that it creates intrigue and mystery, and like you got no context and you saw that image, it creates questions of like, what's going on here? And you can build a story around that. So it's pretty striking to me. I think it's drawn really well. He's got that yellow voice. There you go, Pete. Front and center, and like again, so many lines to bring the. Okay, it's not film, but Norm Breyfogle is bringing his like his pizzazz to that
Yeah.
to that page.
He's exclaiming out of the fact that he's got every muscle in his torso clenched as he tries to yank himself away from the wall.
Yeah, I mean, almost a backup. It was close. It was in the graveyard because that cape off to the side, and then also of how Batman with the chain of "I am not insane" as he's trying to pull. I think that's done really well. But I mean, this is a Breyfogle book. There's so many pages, but that one is my pick.
Nice.
Would you like to see this adapted in animation?
I would, but like we do have like the aforementioned trial episode as well as Dreams in Darkness, another Batman anime series where like he is committed because he's been hit in the face with like Scarecrow's fear toxin, so he's kind of like not in his right element there. But I could totally see this in an animated I can see this in animation like, but like I feel like it would be kind of short, even if like you kind of like, I think like at most it would have been like a 2-parter on Batman the Animated Series, and I think that's like with padding because like yeah sure it's 4 issues, but it's like it can be told very quickly and everything. But yeah, I would like to see this in animation, but I wonder if it would be one of those things where you'd have to have some supplemental material with it, or just like it's 2 stories in 1 video. Not sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if you thought more as like a TV. So let's pretend Caped Crusader that's coming someday. Purportedly, that 2 like multiple episodes of that, or do you go with the 75 minute movie? And it's like, that's tough because I think the story is somewhere in between that. You'd have to add, but then how do you expand the story? Yeah. You'd have to expand it somehow, but then how do you do, like, I don't know. I'd just be like, man, somehow you can't recreate Breyfogle's art, do something kind of interesting with it, really build that atmosphere with this. And then I'd kind of be all for it. But if it was just kind of like a quick cash in, I'd be like, I don't know. But I'll also be all for like open-minded. Yeah, give me a shot. Like, give it a shot. Sure, let's see. Yeah, and I'd be that way with this.
But like, I feel like the animation for the past few movies have been kind of stiff. I think it's the word I would use. So I don't know if it would have the dynamism of Breyfogle's art and everything, and like images that really like leap off the screen or not. So I'm not too sure. Like if you're able to have like a decent budget, like if like Cape Crusader did it, like I would kind of be like, yeah. And I think like the subject matter, I think would work, especially since Bruce Timm said like, oh, all the stuff I couldn't do for Batman the Anime Series, I'm doing with this, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on who you ask. Like how you want to talk about his sensibilities as a storyteller as of late. Yeah.
Don't know how I lean on that. So maybe the restrictions are a good thing. I don't know. Might not be. But then the talent that's also included behind that gives me more confidence that it's going to be good. So also Bruce Timm has created a lot of really good stuff. So
yeah, no, I'm like, give me a trailer, give me something.
Yep.
I don't want to know. I want to know this exists and not sitting next to Batgirl on some hard drive in the Warner Brothers archive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely coming. But for I don't know, for whatever reason, there's nothing. It was announced the same time as this My Adventures with Superman, and I think that is about to wrap up its first season. Yet they were both announced at the same time. So I don't know. We'll see. But anyways, Tim, what are your final thoughts on The Last Arkham?
I adore Alan Grant, Norm Breyfogle as a team. Like, and it's such a great kickoff to this series of stories of the Shadow of the Bat, which for the longest time as a kid, I got mixed up with Legends of the Dark Knight. I would confuse like which story is which. Like, oh yeah, Shaman, that's totally Shadow of the Bat. Like, no, it's Legends of the Dark Knight.
How dare you?
I know. It's shame on me. Um, but yeah, and also realizing that my first episode on here was Legend of the Dark Knight story. Now,
Boom.
come to think about it, but yeah, it's a great introduction to this team and this line of Batman stories, and it's just a really cool story. It's a cool murder mystery and a detective story that I feel like people who have said like, oh, I want to read Detective Batman, I want to see, and not jerk ass Batman. This is a great story for people to check out.
Fully agree. Illustrated perfectly by Norm Breyfogle. No surprise. Written so well by Alan Grant. No surprise. And they do a little, it doesn't get in the way in how he restructures the plot. It feels organic. And like I said, it ends that first chapter, that first issue as a big, like, wait, what? It's like it builds up so much. I think Grant just really structured the story well. And I think that it's interesting. And I mean, there's a lot of new IP created these days where it feels like, oh, you're creating this just to create it. Here's the case where, I mean, it even said in the intro, we're going to create a new villain. And it worked like really well, I think.
He's
so just, a great story. I'm really glad that you chose this one because it's been a while for me to read it. And it's also a really good one. So if somebody's made it this far listening and haven't read it, like, go read it.
You'll the only thing you be denying yourself without reading it is not reading a really good story.
Yeah.
There's no downside to reading it.
Not at all. Zaz did it.
Yeah.
That doesn't really ruin it.
No.
Like, doesn't really ruin it. Tim, thanks again for coming back on. Thanks for sitting with me here we're at 75 minutes. Appreciate
about the length of like one of these animated movies. I hope we're as entertaining as one of those animated movies. Thank you for having me back on and enduring the group chat that you, our friend Preston Willis, and I have, and we're just bombarding with nonsense.
Nonsense. I love it.
Daily basis.
That's what it's there for. That's why social media was created.
Oh, totally. It started as a Halloween chat, but like it is devolved into like, hey, look at this funny meme I saw.
Yeah, look at this funny thing. Do you have any plugs that you want to plug away on anything?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media, both on Twitter and Instagram. I'm calling it Twitter. I'm not calling it X.
You go to twitter.com and it still pops up. So, hey,
exactly. The URL is still the same. This is Tim Rooney. Same thing for Instagram. The Anything Goes podcast. I just released an episode today about where I'm at with my feature film, Where's Smiling Sarah? Yeah, I talked about a little bit of an update that we're starting the film. And finally, and we're in the process of slowly putting that together, and
awesome.
I'm really excited for it. So follow me for updates of all that, and I hope for those who do follow, hopefully you guys enjoyed the story that I'm telling here.
Yeah, check it out. I have something that you showed me almost made me piddle in my pants too, and I think so. Job well done, Tim.
Yes, I'm like, this has no context, but I hope it makes people jump, and thankfully it has. So I'm like,
yep,
yes.
Almost had an accident as an adult. As for me, you can follow the Batman Book Club on Twitter and Instagram at the Batman BC for latest episode drops, upcoming episodes, and sometimes even some giveaways. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Batman Book Club. Pete and I, obviously, it's been a while, but we're going to get to that No Man's Land, much like we did with Return to No Man's Land. So check that stuff out, and some more like video episodes coming up soon too, and those will be fun. Those will be cool. If you want to support the show, there's a variety of ways you can do it. Like I said at the top, patreon.com/thebatmanbc, tpublic.com, and type in TBBC for the Batman Book Club, where you can get some fun items with that ballin' logo created by Justin Kowalski splattered all over it. But if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, that's 100% a-okay. The easiest, quickest, and most impactful thing you can do is rate and review the show. So wherever you listen to it on podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, iHeartRadio, just rate and review the show. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic. So for Tim Rooney, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, read my Batman comics.